it to White. Looking around, has time, throws it. Did he get the feet down? What an effort! Touchdown, Amendola! Stepping up and throwing, and it is knocked down by Gilmore.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
Toss to White. He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a Wicked Good Patriots Podcast, presented as always by Guy Boston Sports. I am your host, Anastasios Kilimos. They refer to me as the Greek Freak. Happy Combine Week. We are officially getting closer and closer to the start of the new league year. We're kind of past that lull period now between the Super Bowl and off-season stuff. Combine Week is kind of the official start to the NFL offseason. We are obviously less than 2 weeks away from free agency. We're going to have we're also in the franchise tag period. So this is Combine Week kind of, in my opinion, is the unofficial start to the offseason and the new league year for most teams. I know the new league year technically doesn't start until March 15th. I consider Combine Week to be the beginning because now it starts the draft speculation. Now starts all the free agency talk, draft talk. Obviously we're at, franchise tags are going to start being placed on people. We're going to see more cuts coming up. We've already seen some cuts, like Carson Wentz cut from the Commanders, some other big cuts. So you're seeing roster moves finally take place. Most of the coaching hirings have already happened. So now you're seeing cuts, franchise tags, draft speculation, free agency speculation. Like I said, we are less than 2 weeks away from NFL free agency. I'm not going to talk too much about the Combine here. I'm really not going to talk about the Combine much at all. There are plenty of shows right now who are covering the Combine. And it's not that I don't find the NFL Draft Combine interesting. I love the Combine. It's one of my favorite times of the year. It's where you get to see kind of the next generation of the NFL highlight their athleticism for you. And again, I love watching the 40 times. I love the whole, all the interviews, all the, everything that comes with the Draft Combine. I do love it. The problem being that I have a love-hate relationship with the Combine. I hate to say that it's not important to the draft process, because it is. It's very much important. It does make a huge difference for a lot of players. Their Combine, how they do at the Combine. Look at John Ross. Look at guys like that who, were not like highly touted, but they go out in the Combine, they run a crazy 40 time, and all of a sudden they're a first-round pick. It can make or break some prospects. My problem being that the Combine, to me, it shows your athleticism, but doesn't really show much of you as a player. So, does it matter? Yeah. Does it matter a ton? I personally don't think so. I look at the Combine, and I think you can learn some things. Sure. The analogy that I like to use for the Combine is, you're making yourself some ice cream at home, and, if you have whipped cream on it, does it make it better? Yeah. Do you need it? No. I think you can still enjoy the ice cream without the whipped cream, and I think it's the same thing. I think, you don't need the Combine to really know what a player's like. I feel like coming into the Combine, most of these scouts, most of these teams, they have a pretty good idea of what they're looking at in terms of the talent, because you have film, you have their college tapes, you have all this other stuff. Again, that's not to say the Combine doesn't enhance it. Like whipped cream can enhance the ice cream. It makes it a more enjoyable dessert. The Combine can make it, it can make a prospect look better. It can help a scout really determine what they're looking at. It can, in a lot of cases, if you're really stuck between a couple players, their Combine grades could be the difference maker. So I do understand the importance of the Combine. I'm just saying, for me personally, in terms of breaking it down, talking about it, I don't really see the need to. Again, there's so many shows right now that are talking about the Combine. It just doesn't, to me, to sit here and just talk about 40 times and how many reps somebody got on the bench and stuff like that. It doesn't matter to me as much. I'm rather talk more about what's coming up on the horizon, which is free agency. That's the other thing, is the Combine's fun and all, but the draft's 2 months away, 2+ months away. we're doing draft stuff now, and it's like the real thing we should all be talking about is free agency, which is very much coming up in less than 2 weeks. March 15th is the start of the league year, which is where teams can officially start signing people. But March 13th is when the legal tampering period is officially starting. So starting March 13th, which is, a week from Monday, teams can start negotiating. They can start meeting with free agents, and that's kind of, when free agency begins. So, I'd rather talk about that personally. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Not going to be a very long episode. Not going to be a super in-depth one because I'm sure I'll release another episode next week before free agency starts where I really kind of give you my predictions and preview for Patriots free agency period. No, instead I thought for this little episode I would kind of give you my wish list, if you will. It's kind of a wish list. It's also kind of like marking which areas of concern need to be addressed first and foremost. The Patriots do have a couple of positions that they need to address. And, there's an ongoing debate amongst fans and media, which areas are more important than others. Do we need a corner more? Do we need a wide receiver more? Do we need an offensive tackle more? Some people are bringing up the question, do we need a quarterback more? And so I thought I would kind of dive into that subject and also give you some guys on the free agency market and also in trades, because trades are a part of it, that New England could possibly pursue in the first couple weeks of free agency to try and improve the team. I don't think quarterback is a position of need. I think there are three positions that New England really needs to address, kind of four, but really three. Number one, wide receiver. It's really sad to me that after all of these years, wide receiver is still a top need. I don't know if it's necessarily the top need. I'm not going in order of importance. I'm just saying one of the top needs is wide receiver. It's sad. It's sad because they have dipped so many resources into this position, not just in the post-Brady Patriot era, also in the final years of Brady's career. They threw draft picks and money and all kinds of things at these receivers in the hope of building a solid receiving core, and they have failed time and time and time again. Go back to 2019. They go get Antonio Brown. Now, Antonio Brown actually probably would have been great for the Patriots had he not been a psychopath. That doesn't work out. They go out and trade for Mohamed Sanu. That was a disaster. They obviously made multiple runs at Josh Gordon. That didn't work out. They went out and got Brandon Cooks. Now we're even going farther back. They got Brandon Cooks in the hope of getting a number one wide receiver. That didn't work. They have tried time and time again to go get Nelson. Nelson Aguilar, I don't think they ever thought of him as a one. But they have brought in so many receivers. They've drafted receivers. Obviously everyone knows the N'Keal Harry stuff. And now, the jury's still out on Tyquan Thornton, but he didn't really. He looked subpar, to say the least, his rookie year. Again, way too soon to call it a bust or say he can't be good, but I wasn't impressed with his rookie season. Again, with a real play caller and hopefully a better offense, we'll see what he does. But again, it's the same thing. My friend Johnny, he's a diehard Raider fan. I tell him all the time, the Raiders, how many picks and amounts of money they wasted at the wide receiver position before they finally just went all in on Devontae Adams. Leading up to that point, they just spent every year drafting, and Henry Ruggs, you can't control that. The corner position, I think the Raiders have invested between free agency and the draft in 20 corners over the last 4 years, and they still don't have a good corner, not one. The Patriots are the same thing. We just keep investing in wide receivers. The only wide receiver in the last 5 years that New England has gotten that's been consistently good is Jacoby Myers, who was an undrafted rookie free agent. Go figure. The only other one that's had, Kendrick Bourne the year before, 2021, he kind of looked like he was going to be something. And then last year, I don't know, he had beef with the coaches. I don't know what happened there. But Kendrick Bourne was a no-show his second year at the Patriots. It's sad. Wide receiver is still a position of need. And listen, the formula is there. The writing is right there. if you want Mac Jones to take that big step and become like the Joe Burrow or Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, you got to go get him a wide receiver. And not just a wide receiver. I mean a prolific wide receiver one. I'm not talking about a Devontae Parker. I'm sorry. I like Devontae Parker. And I actually think he could be good for the Patriots this year as like a number 2 or number 3 option. I think Devontae Parker's not bad. But he's not a wide receiver one. I don't even think he's a wide receiver 2. He's a low-end wide receiver 2. They go out and get guys like Devontae Parker and Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne, and they expect it to work. They're like, this is going to stick. This will fix the problems. It doesn't. You need to go get an actual wide receiver one. And it's not for a lack of trying. You know, they drafted N'Keal Harry in the first round. They thought he was going to be the guy. There was like 7 top receivers in that draft, and they missed on all of them. They had opportunity to get a lot of them. Guys like Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, those kind of guys, they just didn't, took N'Keal Harry over that. Sad. But again, wide receiver is still a position of need. They need to get a number 1 wide receiver. Again, it's not about getting just a receiver. It's not about just going to get somebody to fill the position. I saw Robert Woods was connected. A couple articles were saying that Robert Woods would be a great fit for the Patriots. I don't want Robert Woods. That's not what we need. Another bum. I hate to say that because Robert Woods in his prime was not a bum, but another one of these wide receivers that's just kind of a middle of the pack receiver. He's a wide receiver 3 at this point. I would take Devontae Parker over him and Jacoby Myers and probably Kendrick Bourne. I mean, again, it's just a rumor, but that's the kind of move we don't need. Don't go get another receiver like that. Someone who, is just a stopgap. He's just someone to hold, a bridge wide receiver, if you will. Someone who's just there to take the spot until you get the top receiver. It's time to go all in and get a top receiver. If you truly want to see if Mac Jones is the guy, if you truly believe Mac Jones could be the guy, you need to get him a weapon. You need to get him a receiver. Not Devontae Parker, not Kendrick Bourne, not Nelson Aguilar. You need to go get him an actual top flight receiver. So here are the options in my wish list, and this is, I've done a little bit of research, based off of obviously, could you realistically get them? I have 3 wide receivers who, they're actually all trades, because I feel like at this point, this is a weak wide receiver free agency class. If you're going to get a top receiver, you're going to get it through trade. I don't think they should get it. I know they're connected to Jackson Smith from Ohio State. I like him. He's a good prospect. We need a surefire thing. Enough with the prospects. Enough with guys who, the potential's there. No. Get a guy who is a proven commodity. So there's 3 guys, in my opinion, at wide receiver who New England could possibly take that would step in, immediately be a wide receiver 1, and solve a lot of their problems. Number 1, first and foremost, a lot of people have been talking about it, is DeAndre Hopkins. I know the beef with Bill O'Brien, a lot of people see as a setback, and I'm sure it is. And I'm sure if any trade is going to happen, there's going to have to be a sit down between O'Brien and Hopkins, because clearly their relationship did not end well in Houston. We all know the story with the Hopkins trade to the Cardinals and all that stuff. But Hopkins is perfect. He is just what the doctor ordered for Mac Jones. I know he's older. I know his, how many years he has left as being, one of the top receivers in the game. I don't know. But from 2015 to 2020, I think he was the best wide receiver hands down. I think he's better than Adams. I think there's not a receiver who I personally think was better than DeAndre Hopkins in that 5-year stretch. And that was only a couple of years ago. And even, at the Cardinals, he showed Kyler Murray was playing great with him. And then obviously you had the suspension last year. But Hopkins is a great player. And he's expensive, yes. But again, enough with trying to find bargain bin receivers. You got to pay. The Eagles had to pay for A.J. Brown. The Bills had to pay for Stephon Diggs. The Dolphins had to pay for Tyreek Hill. The Bengals, they haven't paid Jamar Chase yet, but they will. They're going to have to soon. If you want a top receiver, if you want to fix this offense, if you want to give Mac Jones a fighting chance to prove himself as a franchise quarterback, spend the money, spend the picks, do whatever it takes. I'm sick and tired of it. Just get a receiver, man. No, I'm so sick and tired of like every year it's like, well, we got Devontae Parker, or we'll add Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne. That should fix things a little bit. If you really want this offense to thrive, if you really want Mac Jones to have a fair chance, get him a number one weapon, and that is DeAndre Hopkins. You're probably not going to give up too much because he is older and expensive. You only have to give up first-round pick. You probably get him for your second-rounder. Second-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, and you got to pay him. I think it's a fair trade-off. You got the 7th most cap in the NFL, according to Over the Cap. And you can make more money. You can make more space by cutting and extensions and whatnot. Go make a move, and Hopkins is a great one. Aside from Hopkins, the next guy I would bring up is Jerry Jeudy from the Broncos. This one's a little tougher because there's a new regime now. I think the old regime was trying to trade him. He was being shopped at the trade deadline last season. So Jeudy was very much available, but now Sean Payton's in the house. He's obviously revamping everything. I don't know if he'd want to move off Jeudy because the thing with their receiving core, you have Cortland Sutton, you have KJ Hamler, you do have some guys there, but I feel like Judy's the best of the bunch of that receiver group in Denver. You really want to move on from that? I just can't see. I personally can't see Sean Payton moving on from it, but Jeudy continues to remain in trade rumors and a lot of links to the Patriots. I've seen a lot of articles, a lot of guys close to the league who have mentioned Jeudy in New England in the same sentences. I think Jeudy would be a wide receiver one. He would come in instantly in New England and be an immediate threat. Again, what would it cost? I don't think a first round pick. I think you can get Jerry Jeudy for probably a second rounder. But he is another guy. And then the third guy I was thinking of is T. Higgins from the Bengals. Kind of the same situation with Jerry Jeudy where it was floated around that he's available, and now it's kind of being backtracked. Like for the Broncos, it's because they brought in a new coach and new regime. For the Bengals, I think it's because obviously he's their second best receiver. They really don't want to get rid of him, but they can't really afford to pay him, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, all these guys. They got to kind of pick and choose. I think T. Higgins is going to be the guy they eventually let go. And so I think Higgins will be the priciest. I think T. Higgins will be the most expensive in terms of draft picks because he is young. He is one of the better young receivers in the league. He was a first-round pick. Probably going to cost you a first-round pick to get him. Whereas I think with Jeudy Jeudy was a first-round pick too, but with Jeudy and with Hopkins, I think that you could probably get away with a second just because of their situations. Hopkins wants out. He's made it very clear he wants out. He's older. He's expensive. Jeudy hasn't been paid yet. You're going to have to pay Jerry Jeudy a pretty good amount of money. But again, if I'm New England, just pay the guys. Just pay them. Just don't second guess it. It's a lot of money. Just pay the receivers. Get Mac Jones a number one. Not any receiver, a number one wide receiver. So those are the three guys that I think, again, this is not a great free agent class for wide receivers. So if you're going to get one, you have to be through trade. So those are the three guys that I would say. The next position of importance is offensive tackle. Isaiah Wynn, good riddance. I had hope for the longest time that he would stay healthy and eventually, realize his potential. And maybe he will. Maybe he will realize his potential somewhere else, but it's not going to be in New England. And he's gone. We still have Trent Brown. The idea of Trent Brown was a cool one. Kept bringing him back from the Raiders. I think he's older. I think he had some really bad moments last year. I've seen videos of him working out. Maybe he finds his form again as a great tackle. I'm not really holding out hope. So I do think offensive tackle is a big area of need. Now, This draft has some good tackles. Peter Skoronski from Northwestern is someone who I personally like the most out of this draft class. I think he's a great fit for the Patriots. There are other tackles too, though, in the draft that are good fits. However, I do think free agency is the best route to go just because there's some proven guys. Expensive. Going to be a little expensive, but proven guys who can step in day one and immediately play great. Whether you play him at left tackle or right tackle, whatever side of the field you want to play him on. Mike McGlinchey, Notre Dame guy, 49ers tackle, free agent, great fit. Would be a great signing. I would love to have Mike McGlinchey in New England. There's also Orlando Brown Jr. from the Kansas City Chiefs. Very possible they land him. You see what he's done with Kansas City. I mean, that Super Bowl against the Buccaneers, they got annihilated on the offensive line. They go out, they get Orlando Brown Jr., and it makes the world of difference for that offensive line. Not just him. They obviously also added Joe Thuney, who I do sorely miss. But I do think Orlando Brown Jr. is also a great option. So those are two guys on my wish list who I look in free agency. I'm like, those guys I would very much like. I mean, there are veteran options too. Like Kelvin Beachum is there. Kelvin Beachum would be the guy I think you sign if you decide, listen, we're gonna wait for the draft and we're not gonna spend big on an offensive tackle here in free agency, but we need something, an insurance policy, if you will, in case in the draft we don't get the tackle we want or we don't take a tackle. And that's what I think Kelvin Beachum would be a solid, kind of like a Band-Aid on a bullet hole kind of thing where it's like, it kind of stops the bleeding, but it doesn't fix the problem. But if you want to spend big, if you want to fix the problem right away, Mike McGlinchey and Orlando Brown Jr. Those two, I think personally, would be huge upgrades easily over Isaiah Wynn. Pricey, yes, but again, you have the 7th most cap space in the league, and I mean, 7th most cap space, and you can make more. Realistically, there are cuts you can make. You can move some bonuses. You can create some bonuses, move some money around. There's more money to be made. You could make more room if you want to. And so, I do think that you can afford McGlinchey and you can afford Orlando Brown Jr. You can pay one of those guys and still make more moves. It's not like it's it's not like it's a Lamar Jackson where if you sign him, that's it. That's the only move you can make this offseason. You can sign McGlinchey or Orlando Brown Jr. and still have enough money left over to still make some more roster additions. So, wide receiver, big issue. Offensive tackle, big issue. There are some guys on the free agent market for offensive tackle who I really like. McGlinchey or Brown Jr. I've seen a lot of people say Orlando Brown Jr. to New England is very likely. I think Pro Football Focus also predicted that. I would not be surprised to see Orlando Brown Jr. End up in New England. The next area, the last big one for me that I think is, I could define it as secondary. I'm going to say corner. And the reason I said maybe define it as secondary is because depending on what happens with Devin McCourty, you could need a safety. And there are some good ones. Jesse Bates comes to mind. Jamal Dean comes to mind. Jordan Poyer comes to mind. There are some good safeties in this free agency class. So if there was any year to lose McCourty, this one isn't bad. Now you still have Kyle Duggar, and you still have Adrian Phillips, and you still have Jalen Mills, who was a safety in Philadelphia. So you may not even need to sign a safety, but if you lose McCourty, it's a big loss. You're probably going to want to make an addition. So I say secondary just because depending on McCourty's situation, you may need a corner and a safety, but absolutely corner. DB, defensive back, is absolutely, I think, honestly, might be the most important need. Like wide receivers, it's between wide receiver and D-back, personally. I think our defensive backs last year, they overperformed expectations. Like I thought our secondary was going to be bad last year. They definitely surprised me how well they played. Jonathan Jones is a free agent. I personally would not pay him a bag. I like Jonathan Jones, and he played very well last year, but he's not a corner one. He's not. He's not a CB1. He's a CB2. A good CB2. He stepped up last year, and he was pretty good. I gotta give him credit. I mean, going up against some really great wide receivers, playing the AFC East is not easy when you got Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, and Garrett Wilson, guys like that. So credit to where credit's due, and he deserves to get a nice bump in pay. Is that going to come from New England? Part of me says I hope not, honestly. He's a great corner. I don't want to lose him, but like paying Jonathan Jones well north of $10 million a year scares me a little bit. I would rather get a corner with more upside. I think Jones is kind of limited. I think what you see is what you get kind of thing. But even if they do re-sign Jonathan Jones, the cornerback position in New England's kind of thin. They use Jalen Mills as a corner, even though he's technically a safety. They have Jack Jones, who they drafted last year. Didn't really get to see much of him, so I don't really know what to expect. I mean, he had a couple of moments here and there sprinkled in that I was like, okay, he's got something. But he had, I don't know, disciplinary issues towards the end of the year where he wasn't playing. And then, Marcus Jones was technically a corner, but now it seems like he's more of a special team / offensive guy. So the cornerback position in New England is kind of a problem. But again, like offensive tackle, this is a good year to have this problem because there's a lot of corners available, whether it be in the draft where you have guys like Joey Porter Jr. Or in free agency. There are options. Sean Murphy Bunting, Byron Murphy, some of those guys that come to mind off the top of my head that are going to be available to New England. There's a lot of corners in the draft as well. Draft and free agency, some really high-quality corners. The question is, do you want to wait and draft one or do you want to sign one? I would say, why not both? I mean, it would not hurt them to honestly use the first-round pick on a corner and then also sign, I'm not saying sign, a top-tier corner, but a solid, maybe you re-sign Jonathan Jones, you still draft a corner. Maybe you go a little cheaper. I don't know. But there's a lot of corners available. The one guy I will say I don't want is Jalen Ramsey. I've seen a lot of this. I've seen a lot of people saying Jalen Ramsey, Jalen Ramsey, Jalen Ramsey. I think that's a horrible idea. I think, listen, is he a great corner? Yeah. It's hard to argue that. I mean, he's had a great career. Is he overrated? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You can be a great player but also be overrated because I do think Jalen Ramsey is one of the better corners in football. But he thinks he's an all-time great. I personally wouldn't categorize him as that. I think there's a lot of times where I watch him play and I'm like, he's supposed to be the best corner in the league, and I see him get cooked fairly consistently. There's a reason the Rams won out, beyond the fact that obviously they're capped out with no draft picks, and he's kind of a cap casualty at this point. I see New England linked to it. They actually are like top 5 in odds to trade for him. It wouldn't cost a lot to get him because you'd have to pay his salary. And the Rams are just trying to recoup picks. But I personally wouldn't dip my toe into that pool. I wouldn't. I think he's a great player. I think he's an upgrade over Jonathan Jones. Sure. But he's older. He's expensive. I don't like his personality or his attitude, and that doesn't really matter, I guess. But to me, it matters. I just don't like him as a I don't care for his attitude, like, constantly calling out players, and then, like, does he back it up sometimes? Yeah. But there are a lot of times where, like, he talks a lot of smack, and then, like, he gets blown by and playing defense. It's like, you're supposed to be the best corner. And I see you get cooked fairly consistently. It would be interesting to see in New England, though, how Jalen Ramsey would be. It would be interesting to see how he would work with Belichick. And again, I'm not gonna, if they go out and get Ramsey, am I gonna cry about it? No, I'm just saying, like, if I have the choice to choose between Jalen Ramsey and somebody else, like drafting Joey Porter Jr. or signing someone like Byron Murphy or Sean Murphy Bunting, I'd rather, or just keeping Jonathan Jones. I probably just want to go with the other options instead of Ramsey. If we think we can't get anybody else and we need an upgrade and Ramsey's our option, then by all means I'll be happy with it. But I personally am not the biggest fan of the idea of trading for Jalen Ramsey, personally. And then like the fourth position, again, it's not, those three that I just mentioned are the primary ones. Those are the ones that need to be addressed: corner, wide receiver, tackle. The other position is linebacker. I like our linebacking unit, but it's what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't know. It's just not deep in my opinion, and you also have some risk because Josh Uche obviously is going to get paid soon. You have a couple of guys who are question marks. There are some good linebackers available. Devin Bush is a guy who I've seen New England linked to in a lot of articles and a lot of rumors. I wouldn't mind Devin Bush. There's a lot of linebackers in the draft that are pretty good. So linebacker, I think, is after you've addressed everything else. After you've addressed tackle and wide receiver and corner, then you can go ahead and look at linebackers. But again, the three positions that really need to be addressed: wide receiver, offensive tackle, and corner. In terms of importance, I would say wide receiver and corner are really fighting for that one spot. Offensive tackle is important, but I feel like, again, you could go get a Kelvin Beachum, and he could hold down the fort for a year. And there's a lot of good tackles in the draft you can probably get either in the first round, and maybe someone could fall in the second round. But yeah, those are the big concerns I have of the Patriots. Those are the areas they need to address in free agency and the draft, but mainly free agency, I feel like, is where a lot of the damage is going to be done in terms of their offseason moves. But guys, I'm not going to keep going on for too much longer here. We got plenty of offseason football to talk about in the coming weeks. I just want to give you my kind of brief introduction to the offseason, kind of my initial thoughts regarding positions and what New England needs and the state of the team, kind of. I think the Patriots are in a pretty good spot, all things considered, considering how things went last year. The offensive line, yes, we need offensive tackle. But you have Cole Strange. You have David Andrews. You have Mike Onwenu. You do have some guys there. A wide receiver, Jacoby Myers is a big question mark if he's coming back or not. Wide receiver is a mess, but like Bill O'Brien's taking over. That means hopefully Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry will finally have a resurgence and finally be utilized in the offense correctly. So we have that going for us. We have Mac Jones, the running back. Even if we lose Damian Harris, we have Ramondre, we have Pierre Strong. I don't know. I'm very excited for the offseason. I'm very excited for free agency. I don't think it's going to be as crazy spending-wise as it was in 2021. But I don't think it's going to be too far off. I think New England could be very spend-heavy this offseason as they try to get back to the playoffs. Robert Kraft's not messing around. He wants to get back to the playoffs. Not just get there, but to win too. So, guys, thank you for listening very much. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Otherwise, give us a like and on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to us. We thank you for supporting the show, and we will see you later.